everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Joe Moore here, coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have Ash. Ash started a company called Micro1p, soon to be called Journey or Journeys. And it's a really interesting microdosing company out of the Netherlands. And I think it's a fun talk we have. So we kind of go over Ash's origins from like spending time working on a mescaline or peyote or San Pedro farm somewhere in Spain, something like that. His path towards entrepreneurship and essentially social entrepreneurship at a certain point. So really interesting story. I think y'all are going to like it. And, you know, there's a lot of people involved in the psychedelic world now and a lot of really interesting stories. And this is one of them. So let me know what you think. If you enjoyed it, get us an email at psychedelicstoday, email@gmail.com, or share the show with a friend. If you want to support us, you can leave us a small monthly donation at patreon.com/psychedelicstoday. Follow us on socials or leave us a review somewhere. Your podcast app on your phone or Facebook or wherever. It always helps. So really, really, really thank you for all of you who have done that, and all of you leaving us donations at Patreon, and all of you who have bought classes from us. So we're going to keep trying our best to make more great classes for you. A new one out there is Imagination is Revelation, kind of a psychedelic look at Carl Jung by a friend of ours, Johanna. And we've got another one. Oh, what is it? It's like exploring psychedelics and the shadow side of psychedelia that Kyle did with Ito Cohen. That's a great one. You can find all these at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. We've also probably sold out our September edition of Navigating Psychedelics for clinicians and therapists by now. But if you want to be sure, just go over and check that out, psychedeliceducationcenter.com. Group 2 had some spots left, and waitlist is going for Group 1. So if you want to make Group 1 still, you can sign up for the waitlist, and maybe we can sneak you in. So I think that's it for right now on the front end. We really appreciate y'all tuning in. We really couldn't do this without you. So thank you all, and thank you all for your support. All right, signing off for the front end. Love you. See you on the other side. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Ash from Europe, and Ash has a lot of really interesting projects underway, including a drug manufacturer company helping supply researchers, CBD company, and more. So, Ash, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you, before we dig into your background, other than kind of a psychedelic entrepreneur, like how do you like to position yourself?
How do I like to position myself? Interesting.
How do you like to tell your story a little bit? Yeah. I
feel that I want to change the world, and I feel that psychedelics are one of the many great ways of changing humanity for the better. And
yeah.
I'm going to do whatever it takes, really.
Outstanding. Yeah. I think that's why a lot of us get involved, right? It's hard to do it in a somewhat grounded way, but it's important, and it's like, you know, real. What else changes people so quickly for such a little investment?
I think once you have it done to yourself, once you have something opened in your mind and you start to change, you realize, wow, like, you know, I was so, you know, my eyes were closed before for, you know, most of my life, and then suddenly this world is completely different, and then you want everyone to realize that.
And when or at what point in your life did you start getting involved in psychedelics kind of seriously?
So in 2010 was the first major experience. I actually moved onto a psychedelic cactus farm in south of Spain,
cool,
in Andalusia. So before that, I had, as in my late teens, I'd experienced some magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, but nothing profound as such. You know, it was just I wasn't really respecting it. And then I ended up getting stuck in the south of Spain, working, like volunteering on farms and things like that. And one of the places I ended up being stuck at was this crazy cactus farm. They had mescaline cactuses, and pretty soon I was invited to a ceremony there, and it kind of completely blew my mind. It absolutely just changed my perspective on everything. And then from there, it's just been this crazy journey.
This is probably a boring question, but what kind of cactus in particular?
San Pedro.
San Pedro, great. Yeah, people seem to love it. I've touched it. I've held it. I've never consumed it.
It's crazy.
It's amazing how available it is too.
Yeah, and how fast it grows, and the fact you can like, you chop a bit off it, and then you can plant the top piece and grow another cactus, and then you've got the middle piece, and it's almost like the more you use it, the more cactuses you get. So
it's incredible.
Really.
It's incredible. So yeah, you had this kind of opening or a big psychedelic experience, and you felt compelled to get involved. And how did you proceed from there? Did you just say, okay, I got to start a business, or do I have to learn, or how did you go?
I had no kind of intention of anything business or entrepreneurial related to psychedelics at first. I didn't even know anything about the legality or illegality. I was just exploring myself. I actually then had my first DMT experience, also in a similar place, and that again just completely, knocked it up another level. I can remember I was sat in a hammock beneath an avocado tree, and somebody brought over this DMT and said, you should try this, and had this DMT, and I was looking at the grass. And it wasn't like a full breakthrough. I went into this grass and I could see the molecules and the structure of the grass, and it felt so scientific. It was really strange. Yeah, it just completely felt like everything was like digitalized. And then after that, I ended up living on the road in a van for a few years. I lived in a couple of squats. I moved to Belgium. I was putting on parties. We got a bit of a crew going. There was, at some points there was about 20 of us in convoy traveling together. Wow. And I was just making bits of money at festivals. We put on a stage. I still have a big circus tent actually, that fits about 400 people in it. And that was what I was doing. I had no intention of getting involved further in psychedelics as such until my ex-girlfriend she got sick with epilepsy. So she got tonic-clonic seizures and partial seizures, and she was having about 12 seizures a day. So she was put on Lamictal and Valium, and she was basically a zombie. And a friend of ours in Canada actually said, you should try CBD. So we tried to get like decent CBD oil. CBD oil wasn't a big thing then really. And we eventually found some. It was crazy expensive, and it instantly like stopped her seizures. They just went from, she went from 12 seizures a day to like a few seizures a day, and within a month she was seizure free.
12 seizures a day. That's unbelievable.
It was like horrendous. I mean, most of these were partial, so she would just like zone out and completely lose focus, and just feel terror, because it also affects it's the frontal lobe, and it affects part of her brain where you feel intense fear that you're out of control. And then occasionally she had the full tonic-clonic, major grand mal seizures. And we were given, but we were supplied with CBD at first after we paid some expensive stuff from this group in the UK now, where cannabis is really illegal, and they're kind of like, they're called Medi Monkeys, and they're amazing. They're a group of guys and girls that just they do it all illegally, and they just provide free medicine for so many people.
Wow.
And they risk serious prison time. They're amazing, like absolutely great. Yeah, and so I ended up starting to create CBD oil myself, and realized that it's actually a lot cheaper to create than everyone else was selling it for. So I decided to form a CBD company and make our own oil and make it organic and make the prices lower than average prices. So that was the kind of first step actually into doing business on, I guess, this side of things, where it's what some people think is questionable, the gray area of, even though CBD is legal, it's just not your usual business.
So we've got seems like hundreds of companies in the US doing CBD now, but in 2012, which sounds like is right around when you were getting started, there was barely anything. I was afraid to fly with CBD. Somebody gave me some and I'm like, They're telling me I was safe. I'm like, I don't know. And then I'm still even like hesitant at that time to buy hemp seeds for food, which I was. But I was like, oh, am I in trouble if I buy these hemp seeds? But that's the United States attitude, right? Versus like a slightly more sensible attitude from elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you're in Colorado, right? Which is pretty much the pioneers of legality, right, for cannabis.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Actually, I think my town might have been the first town to decriminalize possession too.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Breckenridge.
How does that work federally, though? Is it if it's legal in the state?
The town, so you can, it's a weird shell game, right? So you can like make these laws and change the laws, but it doesn't mean that the next organization up can't say no. So like county, state, or federal agents could come in to a town still. Yeah. So it's just that the town won't necessarily do any prosecution, but other organizations that have like jurisdiction here could do things. And yeah, that's the same issue with like decriminalization in Denver of mushrooms. So like people think, oh, cool, it's decriminalized here, meaning they think like nobody's going to come and get them. But we've had federal people come and grab folks in Colorado for mushroom stuff. One in particular is pretty big. Yeah, the guy could do a bunch of time. So it's scary, but we're getting through it. We're just trying to educate each other.
Is there any way that like the state legislators can intervene in federal cases and kind of defend?
So here's a fun one. So years ago, so we have different liquor taxation in every state generally. So in cigarettes too. So where I used to be from, New Hampshire had like the lowest tax in the area. So people from a high tax area like Massachusetts would come over the border and stock up and just go back. And for a little while, state police would actually be like kind of shaking people down, saying, okay, you're buying this stuff just to skip taxes. And the similar stuff was happening at the federal and state level in California around cannabis. So federal agents, even though California says, yes, totally legal, federal agents were still coming in. At a certain point, the governor of California said, if federal agents intervene with anybody, we're going to arrest them.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So which is something that can't necessarily happen in a more normal country. Like when everybody's like fighting each other, like there seems to be some sort of interesting value that can come from that when there's like tensions and different interests, because it's in California's interest to have a lot of cannabis,
Yeah. And I'm guessing the government are into it because, the local government, because it brings tax revenue.
Right, exactly. And the feds, I think, get a lot of money from like liquor and tobacco companies to keep pot illegal. Like, from what I understand, Anheuser-Busch, one of the biggest brewers, was in the States, one of the biggest funders of the drug war, propaganda at least. Yeah.
That's very similar with a lot of psychedelics and with the research chemicals, or when they're sold as legal highs. The same thing happened in New Zealand. A friend of mine, Matt Bowden, he basically changed the law in New Zealand and managed to have it so that they could have legal highs if they are proven to be safe for human consumption. So they were going to create branded versions of, research chemicals as they are now. And it was the alcohol companies that funded all of the opposition to it and eventually strong-armed the government to stop it, which is just pretty demoralizing when, these billion-dollar industries are just like only stopping it because it's taking away from their potential profit.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Like the willingness to put people in prison for, in some cases, decades or for the rest of their lives, like for getting in the way of their business. It's pretty like mafioso.
Yeah. They're the biggest cartels in the world, really.
Yeah. Especially because they have so much money that they can influence so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Scary.
One of the things we're working with right now is the law change in the Netherlands. So at the moment, I'm based in the Netherlands, and it's fantastic for psychedelics and for research chemicals. It was very progressive. Most of them are legal, and they have quite progressive laws about banning things based around harm, rather than just fear tactics, I guess. And that's changing. Well, we're fighting it, but we're in the process right now. I'm one of the founders of an organization which is representing all of the people who are involved in this industry, and we're actually trying to make real arguments with the government, bring it to Parliament, and actually, hopefully, fight this law.
That's good. Yeah. Have you noticed a difference between the way people do politics in like the North America versus in Europe? Like, does it seem like people are maybe less active or have less access to influence politicians
I think that from my own knowledge in America, lobbying is a massive thing there, which isn't really in Europe, which is great because I've read into some of the statistics behind lobbyists and how many millions or tens of millions of dollars get given by oil companies to make sure that there's no environmental protection, that kind of thing. So I think that Europe is a lot more progressive like that, but it's still so corrupt. There's I've had meetings with people involved in politics over this, and some of them have said a lot of the politicians don't actually care. They're giving a front that they care, but it might be a friend of theirs has a company which has an interest that if a certain research chemical was not legal, then their pharmaceutical product would make a lot more money, or if there was more free access to psychedelics, then their product would make much money. So there's all this like outside pressure, and it's this game that people play. It's real corrupt, gross.
All right, good. Just so I thought that was the case. Just to be sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it's just the kind of power the elites have is a really interesting thing. I think in the States they certainly have it. It just doesn't seem like there's oh cool, you've been wealthy for a long time, sure, you get whatever you want kind of an attitude. It's there's a little more disdain and checks maybe.
Okay.
For the rich, famous people. Maybe. I don't know if that's really true, but that's kind of my sense here. But let's jump back into your story and what's going on in Europe. So so you kind of started this CBD company. Are you selling direct to consumer, or were you going into shops, or?
I was selling some to consumers, and then actually providing to a few websites, a few shops, and a lot of them were research chemical websites. So back then some of them were just legal high, or smart shops as they're known as in England. So I kind of got an in like that into psychedelics more because as I started finding out about research chemicals, legal highs, smart shops, one of my very close friends he discovered a number of psychedelics. I won't say his name or anything, but
Thank you.
He's a very, very interesting guy, and made some of the most popular current psychedelic compounds available to the world. So I started just getting passionate about it. I started trying some of these ALD52, LAD, 1P LSD, all of these various different compounds and some of the tryptamine analogs. And it was, I was like, wow, this is crazy. These are legal, and these are, people don't know about this. Some people do, but it's such a small niche. I was thinking there's so much potential because, as research goes in institutions, it's really restricted with psychedelics because, LSD has no medical value, or even cannabis, according to the UN, it's a Schedule 1 drug. So I thought, like, all of these compounds, as they're not controlled, at least I know in America they could be under the Federal Analog Act, but in the rest of the world, they're not. A lot of them aren't controlled. But what great things could come of this if people actually look into it. So I was still doing the CBD stuff. I actually went and spoke at the International Cannabis Business Exposition and gave talks about my experience with the CBD and CBD business. But I set up my company in the Netherlands to start organizing production and of some of these compounds and supply of some of these compounds. So a friend of mine was in the Netherlands, and his business was robbed. Basically, a guy worked for him, and he was English, but the guy who worked for him was Dutch and managed everything for him, and he stole a lot of money from him, and he didn't realize, because the guy was running the company for him. And he contacted me and he said, Ash, do you want to help me run the business? If you help me, if you can help manage it, then I can use his office and his warehouse to get my website going and get everything kind of off the ground for me in the Netherlands. So I went over there, and at first, me and my girlfriend, we were sleeping first few nights of cardboard boxes on the office floor, and we were sharing the position of manager, like, so I could do half a day for him and then half a day building my sites and kind of moving all my CBD stuff to there. And she would work for him the other half of the day. And then we got ourselves, we rented a tiny little place, like a 1-room place, and just focused on growing everything. And it blew up.
That's outstanding.
It's since then, it's just been, I had a lot of hard times before, with my ex-girlfriend getting sick, and when I was living in squats, and we were occupying buildings. I was just playing music on the street and stuff like that. And so then this now, it's really crazy.
It's gonna be bonkers. 10 years later.
Myself.
Yeah. So 2012, 2010 being on the cactus farm to now, it's a big difference. You've really ridden the wave, it seems, too. Stuff's really seems to be blowing up at this point.
Yeah, I feel really blessed, and it's never, it's hard work, but it's never just hard work. It's really luck and being in the right place and meeting the right people and just being honest with people. And so since then, I guess I started Micro1p, which is the world's first legal lysergamide microdosing product supplement.
So it's like individual pills, or?
Yeah. So that's like, it's pills with a psychedelic active ingredient. And it's not available worldwide. We say the world's first, but obviously we can't ship it worldwide.
Right. And it's 1P LSD?
Yeah, 1P LSD is switching to 1CP LSD.
Okay.
So because 1CP LSD is not controlled, like 1P is starting to become in some places.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize people were getting on that, politicians and whatnot.
Yeah.
Are you noticing any difference between all these things, LSD to 1P to, what'd you say, 1C?
Yes, 1CP LSD. So 1P LSD actually does convert into LSD. There's been a couple of papers. I don't have them to hand.
A prodrug of LSD, they call it, right?
However, in the conversion, as a prodrug, it loses about 30% of its potency. So our 10 microgram pills are actually more like 7 micrograms, which is a non-psychoactive amount technically of, it's below a threshold minimum dose of LSD.
That's really interesting. So people are buying this all over the EU, and cool. That's great. And are you hearing stories back from people about microdosing and what kinds of effects it has on their lives?
Honestly, it's amazing. So I started off with, I set up a Telegram channel for people who are using it, and there's only about 100 people actively on this Telegram channel, but the stories of those alone are absolute. It makes me really emotional to read these people opening up about how it's changed their lives, and people messaging us, people emailing us, and I keep an eye on I'm like very active online on Reddit and stuff, just like lurking around, I guess. And yeah, just it's crazy. People who say they have felt depressed, had anxiety, and they just lack focus, and it seems to be that it really helps with so many different things.
I really can't wait for the research to mature, because like people ask me, and I was like, well, the science isn't clear, but it's not harmful, is kind of like what I say. Like, you feel free to try it. And like, I can't, as long as if you're willing to stop if stuff gets too hectic for you, Like
Mhm.
you're pretty much
Yeah.
fine, I think.
Yeah. I would be cautious when taking certain medications. So like, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor and I can't give any, I've got to be careful not to give any medical advice,
Right.
but we do, there's people that reach out and they say, oh, I take SSRIs. And from my own experience with my friends who have taken SSRIs and have recreationally used drugs, I don't think it's a good idea.
Right.
So I kind of always advise against it. But there are people on the group who said that they actually, they take them.
Right. So like I would always be careful, with medical, with drug
Mm-hmm.
interactions. That said, like it's always interesting what drugs are kind of deemed okay to take while taking high dose psychedelics. It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's a number of psychiatric meds that you can be on and for it to still be safe. It's really, really wild. But yeah, go to a doctor to figure that out for yourself before you do this stuff.
It's really tough for most people though, because most doctors, it's very rare to find a doctor that can give advice or is willing to give advice on this. It's the same with CBD, at least when I went back to the UK where I'm from, and I went to see my doctor about something, I can't remember, something random, I had a chest infection or something. And I asked him, I just brought up CBD to him and asked about cannabis and what his opinions of it were. And he was really like, I can't even talk about it. He said, I'm sure I've read some things, but officially it has no benefits. And there's absolutely zero benefit of this. And I can tell you, don't do it.
It's so crazy, right? It's like are you a doctor or are you just working for the government? Like there's so many studies that you can cite to show these medical benefits. Like the seizure stuff alone is unbelievable, not to mention like the potential for helping with various cancers and other stuff. It's just shocking. I've got a number of friends who've done that Rick Simpson oil jam for their cancers. Yeah. It's really intense dosing. Like I really would never want to eat that much cannabis.
Oh, no way. Can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah, right. Like, just got to make sure you've got the appropriate television lined up or something. I don't know, but it's incredible what they do, and it's incredible the help they get too from it. So it's like, well, doctors, come on, catch up. Like there's plenty of stuff out there. And there's plenty of people doing this in the wild too.
I think it'd be really great to get doctors in places like Colorado or doctors in Canada that are now experienced with working with cannabis to go to countries. You get medical exchanges that happens. So if people could set up some kind of medical exchange between these doctors and they could go over and teach doctors in the UK and doctors in other European countries that are open to cannabis, actually teach them about it.
Mm. Yeah, I think that would be very cool. And I think we're kind of seeing it. Well, COVID's probably slowed it down, but there's a lot of really interesting online ed coming up in the cannabis medical space. I've seen some really great moves. So I'm hoping that, just like you suggest, this just kind of happens. And once the virus is really gone, we can really just spread the mission a little more.
Yes, I can't wait to actually, I'm in Paris right now. I've been able to travel, which is great. And this is the first time in months that I've left the Netherlands. But once this is gone, I can't wait to go and start spreading the word again. Yeah.
So, back to Micro1p. Are you like what kind of facility do you need to use to make this product? Like, is it kind of like a food grade kind of lab, or how does that work?
Yes. So we have a contract with a lab in the Netherlands that produces it for us. And so they have all of the GMP certificates and everything required to make it sure that it's up to standards. And then we have certain laws around labeling. So we can't make claims. We can't say this product will cure anything, or this product will even make you really brilliant, clear your mind. But we have to essentially say it just normalizes and may help with neuroplasticity or may help with focus. It's all mays and possiblies and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, we've got to be very careful. So it's officially a food supplement, dietary supplement. Not once you start making claims, and you have to get major studies done, and it's cost millions,
right,
hundreds of thousands. It just isn't financially.
10 years out, maybe, before we get that. Should be really cool. The interest is here. The money's here, really. People are just pouring money into psychedelics now, which is Definitely. Really good, I think. But yeah. And so you've got this whole thing going, and then you were able to get included in or closer to some researchers, and you were able to actually provide research materials to sanctioned research.
Yes. So there's some really, really wonderful people in the Netherlands who work tirelessly in the psychedelic scene. And there's a couple, Breed and Rudy, who are part of Aspire, which they're psychedelic facilitators. They do all of this free. It's really, really wonderful. Those guys just work tirelessly to make sure that they're always setting up events. They run the Third Summer of Love. They run what's it called? I don't remember what it's called. There's a number of different events. High Vinyl, that's the other one that they run. Where just bringing people together, integrating them. They do drum circles, psychedelic gong circles, and they've reached out to me about some their connections. So they're involved with 5-MeO DMT studies. So they needed to source 5-MeO DMT for a study involving Imperial in the UK. So I supplied them with a bunch of synthetic 5-MeO DMT. So no toads were harmed, luckily, in the production of that. And after that, we're just supplying them, or we've just supplied them, I'm not sure, for another study with Maastricht University. And that's also on 5-MeO DMT. And we've started working with Carl H. Smith, which is a co-founder of the Psychedelic Society as well, which is in the UK. Yeah, so we're now just getting involved in trying to provide high quality lab tested psychedelics and research material to any studies, and just so there's as many studies going on as possible. If we can't go and do them ourselves at the moment, we can at least provide materials.
Yeah, be part of the team and just to help folks make it happen, right? Like,
yeah,
people always think
Definitely.
To help, I need to be a doctor or a therapist. It's like, no, there's so many ways to help, and you can help right now. Maybe not by manufacturing, but there's plenty of ways.
Yeah, well, people can help by signing up to these studies. They can agree to take part in them. There's a lot. There's quite a few groups on Facebook you can sign up to, or email lists, and you'll start getting emails about various studies where they're looking for volunteers to, essentially go and experience some crazy psychedelic, getting DMT intravenously. So you're on a 10, 20 minute, 1 hour DMT trip, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm excited that that's been happening, especially under neuroimaging equipment. Like, it's really exciting.
Oh, it's mind blowing. There's some things happening or upcoming with DMT or some various, I think 5-MeO DMT as well, and VR. So people will be wearing VR headsets.
Good.
And they're going to be doing these things, and they're going to put them into, see if, send them into these other realities.
One thing we haven't seen yet is too much data on this like slow administration of IV DMT or 5-MeO DMT. Like, what happens if we administer like a somewhat low dose of 5-MeO for an hour or two? Like, I think there could be some really interesting clinical applications for that. So you don't need the flood dose. You're still getting the drug in there, doing some helpful things, hopefully.
Yeah.
I would just love to see that data.
I'm sure that it's going to be, I think it's going to be, this year, next year, obviously, again, COVID has affected everything, not everything in the world. So things have slowed down a little bit, but it's still, there are things happening. And I think in the next couple of years, I feel like we're in a psychedelic renaissance, really. And we're going to start seeing more and more data, and it hopefully will become widely available to the public.
Yeah, I really hope so. It's seeming that way. Are you familiar with Daniel McQueen's DMTX project in the States?
No, I'm not. What's that?
So extended state DMT work. He kind of was close with Rick Strassman and Andrew Gallimore talking about this. And Daniel's pretty substantial in his own right. But those two helped develop this kind of idea for a infusion pump machine where you could finely tune the dose. So like milligram per second kind of dose. Or like what really fine tuned, right? Probably micrograms per second, and continual stream. So you could theoretically keep the person in there for ages, to the point of probably needing a diaper and a feeding tube, So they're like, okay, what do we need in order to do this? They need a certain kind of model for like metabolism of the drug in people of different sizes. So they've got that, the pharmacokinetic model, I guess they call it. And then what can we do with it from there? Do we explore? Like, do we do the psychonaut thing, or do we do the medical thing? Like, there's plenty of people doing the medical thing, and there's not so many people doing like real research on the psychonaut thing, right? So I think that's the direction they're leaning, and they're, I think, going to do it with. I don't know exactly, but I think they're angling for some sort of legal protection, either in Peru or the U.S. to do it. I don't know that they've started yet, but they've got loads of doctors on board to help. And
brilliant.
Yeah, they're ready to go. It's like really exciting.
How does that work in the USA? Like, is that, and can you do this legally? Is it easy? Or?
So it's definitely not easy. They've been working on it for years. So the whole time I've known Daniel, I've known about this project, and it hasn't, as far as I know, happened yet. So yeah, they'll have to, get permission to do experiments on humans, which would be really hard if you were going to do it through like somewhat official university type research. And then the other way is to get kind of probably protection from the government through a religion. So you would find the right religion and have the religion set up appropriately so that the government couldn't interfere. Make sure you lawyer up appropriately, and then go for it. Yeah, I don't really know how that's going to work. It's a little iffy to me doing it in the States, but there's a chance that it's totally fine and safe.
I imagine it'd be difficult because the production, like the sourcing of it, because either that might be illegal to import it, or then producing it. I don't know if you can get a kind of a license to.
You can get an exemption, I think, a DEA license. Like a number of the religious people do have those exceptions.
Cool.
If you're doing it in a university setting without proper sanction, you're at risk of the university losing huge amounts of federal dollars on account of some like programs from ages ago. Like, yeah, there's a lot of problems with like money and influence here in the drug war. Like, you can't do drug testing at universities to keep people safe because those federal dollars could be at risk. It's really an ugly scene.
Shit.
Yeah. So, but it's possible, right? People have their own labs. Like, there's pharma labs that aren't getting federal dollars necessarily that you could leverage, or food labs. And why not? And it's not quantum physics. It's, chemistry.
No.
And yeah, you can get pharma pure DMT not too hard, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty available, I think.
Yeah.
We wanted to ship to the USA, but we contacted a ex-prosecutor in America, and we contacted a lawyer and an ex-prosecutor. I can't remember where from, but it didn't matter what state, because in the end they said they just said no, don't do it. It's not worth it. Officially it's not directly illegal, but the whole there's the Federal Analog Act, and it's not worth risking it, because it's scary.
What would be interesting is so universities can get exemptions. That's why Johns Hopkins is able to do what they do, and other schools, universities. They hold a special license, and then they need to find a supplier who's got appropriate credentials for them to sell to or buy from. So if your organization got approved as a approved provider for research stuff, then theoretically you could. But that's kind of a lot of work. There's already a situation, people over here making it, and like USONA, David Nichols and stuff like that. So, Hard to say it's worth it, but as research amplifies, you never know.
Yeah. I'd like to hope that in the future it won't be like this. And, I'd like it to be across the world, that we can that people aren't persecuted for using, supplying, creating these wonderful compounds, really.
Right. Exactly. It's so frustrating to see, I guess in the US, it's never been exactly illegal to do psychedelic research. That the studies just weren't getting approved.
Mm-hmm.
And people weren't really submitting them. It was like very politically dangerous to be involved for a while. But now the tide's turned and it's like, oh, cool. You want to do that? Great. Of course you should. It's amazing. Funny how things go in and out of fashion.
Exactly. Yeah. Political fashion is so absurd. It's horrible.
Yeah. So also you've been able to support projects like the film Dosed. So you helped support that project a bit, which I loved that movie. I had a great time watching it.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing. I saw online about it when it was in production, and they had these fundraising targets, and I just reached out directly to them, to Nick and Tyler, great guys, absolutely lovely guys, and reached out to them and said, we're really passionate about this, and we really want to support you. So, how much money are you looking for? And we supplied them with a bunch of money to help make it. And then after it was made, they started touring with it, and I decided to organize the the Dutch premiere. So we rented out we got a new Bioscoop cinema, like a huge cinema, and put it on, organize a panel of experts, which, there were some really, really great people on there, and watched this film on, oh my God, I was so proud just to.
And that was your first time seeing it too. You didn't get a sneak peek. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Nice work.
Honestly, I was in tears. It's so moving. And
it's that kind of movie for sure.
Anyone listening who's not watched it, I think really, really should check it out. That it's, the Adrienne, the lady who was the heroin addict, just so raw to see her go through so much pain, and then processing, the psychedelics as well. Like, it's not easy. It shows it's not just like people saying, "Oh yeah, you just take psychedelics and then you're going to be fine, you'll be cured." No, this is like a brutal battle.
They did a great job capturing it too. Like that struggle, how hard it is, like how weird it can be. Like they don't really talk about that. And I just loved how raw it was. I
actually had the guys, I've got my own podcast I started, and I had the guys on my podcast, and we got to speak in detail about what they went through filming it with her. And they said it was so difficult and so emotional, this journey, and it sucked the life out of them, really. I'm sure anyone who makes a film and documentary, and self-funds it it's exhausting. But when you're dealing with someone you love,
I can only imagine. Yeah, we had them on a few months back. It was really nice. The three of them joined.
Really brilliant.
Yeah, it was really nice. And I had my audience kind of submit some questions, and it said, "Hey, look, you can watch the film here and like submit some questions." And the comments were so ridiculous. Some people were like, "Oh, that's forced. That was all fake." I'm like, "No, that was about as legit as possible, guys. Like, come on." And I think I get to ask him about that. I don't know, man. I think people are just really cynical about film out here, in certain places at least, like especially like Los Angeles. So I don't know exactly, but it was just kind of awkward that the audience is like, "Oh, I think that was real." And it was an interesting split, right? Like maybe 20% of the people were like kind of critical, and the rest were like, "Oh, this is awesome." And it's a pretty active Facebook group, so who knows what they actually think.
Yeah. Well, there's always that. You can't really go by the comments on Facebook because people they're hiding behind a screen, right? And I find it really difficult to not read the comments, and like we put up our videos, and if there's even if there's a few comments that are really personal, which I'm sure there would be on this probably, it's really hard not to get upset by it. So you just got to ignore it.
Right. Yeah. But it's really just great that you supported them and you helped pull off the European premiere, Dutch premiere, and I'm hopeful that there will be new, more, even better films over time. Like I found no real error with the film, but I can only imagine that as people watch that, they're like, okay, well, I can do it better. So let's try it this way. And experimentation will lead to that evolution, and the story will continue to be more viral, I hope.
There's definitely some things in the works that I have been told of by a few friends who are documentary makers. And yeah, I think it's really important to get on platforms like Netflix. I think actually things like Netflix are amazing because they don't have influence from advertisers. So it's not the same as like conventional TV stations and these cinemas where they have the influence of these advertisers swaying. They say, we can't put a film about saying drugs are good on our channel. So like on Netflix, they just put shit up there. And so that now people can actually see like not unbiased documentaries on things, like not even just on psychedelics and drugs, but like I just think it gives people an opportunity to have access to a lot more truth.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for that move as well. This Ibogaine story is a tough one to tell. Like I've seen it in one of the earliest pop culture references for Ibogaine for me was in this TV series Homeland.
Okay.
Where they actually like gave it to one of the lead characters, and it was all like CIA people knew about it, of course. So it's really, and that was around 2012 maybe that was happening. And I thought that was really curious.
Was it accurate? The portrayal of it?
It was somewhat, but not really. They made it look horrible, which it's not necessarily pleasant, especially if you're getting it and you don't want it. Yeah, but they did cover the anti-addiction properties fairly well. Have you seen any interesting developments in the Ibogaine space since the Dosed film, or?
Not really, actually. I mean, I know that in Canada, that seems to be the place. I mean, that's where they made Dosed, and there's people like Dr. Gabor Mate, who was in that film, who's actively involved in this, brilliant guy. And then I know of a few clinics that actually a friend went to one on Vancouver Island in Victoria, I think it is. But she actually left early. It was horrendous for her. The experience was way too much, sadly. She was trying to stop years of cocaine and ketamine addiction. And a few days in, it was just, horrendous. She said she was just viewing all of everything she'd ever done bad in her life. She was like revisiting it, and it was just, she was getting sick as she was doing it, and it was like just horrific. So she actually just had to say it.
It's brutal. Yeah.
But I think it's important to talk about experiences like that as well, because psychedelics aren't all just, it's not all fun and games. Not everyone's going to have great experiences.
No.
Not a one size cures all kind of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking back last night actually to some of my bigger experiences, and I'm like, am I gonna do that again? Like some of those were really, really bad, but some of them were really, really good. So I guess yes, but it's like extreme. And to think about needing it again is like a really interesting thing. Like I think I definitely needed some stuff like that in the past, but it's like that need is kind of transformed a little bit.
Yeah, I think some people can just almost have it once, and it can give you what you need, and then maybe never again. Maybe 20 years time, you might feel something else pops up that you can deal with. I've definitely had moments where I've said I'm never doing it again. I think ALD 52 Alad. Sorry, I was just really stupid and cocky, and this is years ago. I thought I was impervious to the negative effects because I was in a good headspace. And I was wrong. Yeah, ended up probably about 300 or 400 micrograms, and I thought I thought I was in a coma, and I thought that I was having these moments where everything was melting and crazy, and my friends were around, and they were talking to me, and every time I took a sip of water, my whole world changed, and suddenly I was led there in a hospital bed with nurses around me, and people go, stay with us, stay with us. I could hear a heart monitor, and I was like, and then I'd pour this water away on myself, and I'd freak out, and I was like, and then every time it was just, I started to believe that my whole reality, that, I didn't have I just started setting up the CBD company at this point. I was like, just all of this stuff wasn't real, and everything was, I was in a coma dream. And it was so convincing that I had a bit of a meltdown, and luckily a friend was there with some sedatives to help me.
Yeah, don't discount the help of sedatives, people. It's not necessarily the best in a psychotherapeutic setting, but if you're having like a somewhat recreational OD, perhaps a Xanax is okay.
Yes.
I had like an 8 to 12 hit experience last summer, and that was wildly intense. I can't say it was awful, but it was just like physically a little too much sensorially. But everything else is kind of interesting. Like, me as like long time deep into the topic. Okay, it's the most acid I've ever had. This is extreme. The triple vision, like the normal seeing plus like an overlay of like everything, every feature of someone's face would have like an electric kind of like squiggly outline on it. Though I'm seeing them normal, I'm seeing that layer, and I'm also seeing like this kind of fractally paisley go at like a angle the whole time too. So it was like multiple layers of vision. If the physicality wasn't like so overwhelming, it actually would have been really cool.
How did you find it with your mind? Like, were you having loops, or were you stuck going into thoughts?
No, like my mind was somewhat lucid for whatever reason. I'm like, okay, this is just acid. But at the same time, I'm just like walking around this music festival with just shorts, no shoes, no shirt. And I'm like pretty pale, so I could get really toasted and sunburned. Somehow I ended up okay, but I'm rolling around vomiting everywhere. Like,
God! And
not a nice sight. Whatever reason, I'm not having a bad time though, which is other than like the vomiting wasn't even hard. Like I didn't really care. I'm like, this is whatever. But like the overall like body buzz is so big. It's liquid LSD. I'm going to be a lot more careful around liquid LSD from now on.
Yeah.
I don't know the move really yet, but just caution.
I find with actual LSD, it's a bit risky just because you don't really know what the actual dosage is.
Right. Like your situation with like 1P or 1CP, like that, like knowing exactly the micrograms. It's amazing. This is why I'm a big proponent of legal access as opposed to like sketchy black markets, like existing again forever. It's like, no, like I would love to know 100 micrograms of pure LSD.
That's something like one of the arguments, that we're having with the government is saying that, when you ban these substances and essentially like they're not going to go away, they're going to just go to the black market. And once it hits the black market, people selling things on the black market have no obligation or care to, lab test and purity test things, not to cut things. So you just don't know what you're taking. You hear obviously the whole thing with fentanyl is horrendous in America, as far as I'm aware. People cutting heroin with fentanyl and things like that, which is just absolutely gross and dark. And the more the stronger the law is on illegal drugs, the more kind of and the more profit people are looking to get because punishment's higher, the more people are going to cut things.
I saw some test reports just yesterday on black market MDMA. Like the lab analysis was essentially heroin plus like traces of 2 other things. No MDMA whatsoever. And you know what it was? They were sold it as MDA, or moon rocks is the colloquial term over here. And 0 of the desired compounds whatsoever. So this is still happening in the black market. And, what do we do about it? Just keep pressing for harm reduction measures. Like Portugal's doing amazing. Switzerland's doing okay. I think the Loop in the UK is a really great organization doing harm reduction services at festivals. So they're actually able to test. So have you heard of the Loop yet, Ash?
No, I haven't. No.
Really amazing organization. They came over to New York to present at Horizons last year. And the degree to which they were able to reduce hospitalizations from the festival was amazing. Like I want to say an above 80% reduction in hospitalizations just by providing their services. Like it might be more than that by a lot too. And it's like, why is this not being copied everywhere now?
That literally should be at every single festival. There needs to be a drug test for sure.
I'm right before COVID, I was lined up at some big festivals to do harm reduction talks and like do tabling and stuff like that. We have Dance Safe here. They're kind of the big harm reduction organization. But they're, limited capacity. They can't be everywhere. Not enough funding. So there's plenty of us to fit the niche. One more time.
Is it anonymous? So like, can you bring, you've got a pill, you bring it there?
For me, the way I would do it, I don't really know how I would do it yet personally, but sometimes people just go around with test kits to go to people's tents and campsites to say, hey, I have these test kits. You guys want to use them? So they'll use them at their like little campsite to test. At the Loop UK though, it is anonymous, I think. And they've got protection. So you can drop off your sample. You come back an hour or two later for your results. And they've got like a little amnesty trash box where you can actually throw out bad drugs, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. For me, it would be all basic reagent testing. So it wouldn't be that accurate, though it would be like, perhaps you find 1 in 100 samples have fentanyl or something.
Well, yeah, you can still see, that's the thing with the Marquis tests, you can still see, it's good enough to see, to stop people dying, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, right. As long as it's not, totally off, like you're probably safe, but yeah, anything's better than nothing.
Definitely.
And yeah, so, I'm hopeful. It's just kind of frustrating to have to like take the slow boat like this with harm reduction. So Ash, like in terms of, world changing things, like typically we think of, the medical benefits of psychedelics. We think of kind of like the spiritual and worldview shift. Like, what do you see as like big avenues for wins and like changing the planet for the better?
I think that the medical and spiritual thing kind of actually intertwine. So things like anxiety and depression are crippling society. So many people have horrendous pressure on them from just these high stress lives. It's exhausting. Just living, and all of the pressure from jobs and education, and so there's just higher suicide rates. There's people suffering and being over medicated, and I think with psychedelics we can just reduce that massively. I mean, I'm not saying we can globally cure depression and anxiety and everyone's going to be happy, but like even if we reduced it by 5%, even by 1%, would be a huge seismic change in people's lives and their attitudes, and it kind of goes hand in hand with opening people up, which then brings people together. So like by tackling those huge problems, it allows people to talk about their problems. Like I think not only psychedelics, but things like MDMA, MDMA assisted psychotherapy, allowing people to open up. Like I for sure that I've tackled so many problems taking MDMA or taking euphoric things, and not even just to get high and fucked up, but taking it as a treatment, to bring myself closer and tackle certain problems that I'm facing. I think that once this becomes more normalized, we really can we can scrap some of these horrific drugs which work for some people, of course, but also just make some people zombies and have opposite effects. And we can actually start to bring people together.
Julie Holland, a psychedelic psychiatrist of sorts in the US, was on a big radio station the other day. One of her lines was, these psychiatric meds that we have people on, they were not designed to be taken for decades. Right?
So true.
Like, Ambien is an amazing drug, but to have to be on it for the rest of your life is such a crazy thing. And that's not even really one of the bad psychiatric meds relative to the others. But yeah, like how do we reframe these psychiatric meds as like a temporary intervention and come up with a strategy on actually healing the person if it's possible? Like, I'm sure there's some intractable cases, but I think a lot of cases we can really help people.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's
there's a lot of doctors who are, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, psychologists, psychoanalysts. Like, I've spoken to a number of them who do use psychedelics completely illegally, and on paper they don't do any of this stuff and they don't condone it, but as they've experienced these things themselves and in the right cases with the right consent, they use it. And there are, which is crazy because like, my hat's off to them. They're heroes, but like they're risking their license, their livelihood, everything. But it's happening a lot. It is happening.
It's really scary, right? Like the fact that you're doing this world-changing research, but you can't necessarily have any kind of immunity for your own personal work.
No.
Like, you've got to, I don't press researchers at all to come out about their use. Just, I don't think it's appropriate anymore.
No.
And I would advise people don't either. Like, if they're a university person, like, they don't need to come out and say it. Like, it's fine. Either way, it's fine. Honestly, they're doing science, and they should be relatively transparent in their data, So yeah, it's a really hopeful thing. And, as a researcher, how could you resist, these stories? Anyway, it's like, there's so much value. Like, oh, look how much you believe in, I don't know, yourself, like the value of you now, as opposed to like, oh, I'm just a cog in a machine, worthless, like saving up for my retirement and then I'm going to die. Like, is that it? No, it's a lot more sophisticated than that, I think.
It's heavy to think that. It really is. And it's that kind of weight on your mind, if that's what you think life is.
Right. Like, meaning making. It's not really a thing that's taught, right? Like, it's, in our culture, it's largely just status. Like, okay, do you have a bigger house? Do you have a nice car? Cool. What kind of degrees you got? Great. It's nothing beyond that, it seems like to me.
No.
Or how much you gave to charity. But, that's something that we really need to think about. Like, what is our value? How do we make each other feel valuable and ourselves feel like some sort of meaning or value? It's a hard thing.
I think feeling gives it. You get value from, like, personally, from giving feeling and meaning to other people, and seeing that gives me value and meaning to my life. Because when I see other people have these positive reactions and like learn and open up about themselves, and then I'm like, wow, I'm changing people like that. So then I feel happy in myself, and then that just spreads. The more people do that, and you're spreading positivity, and it just goes from one person to the next and affects everybody in a good way.
Absolutely agree there. Yeah, there's so much room to like make influence in people's lives in positive ways. Like, you just got to really play your cards right and, be conscientious, and you can really make a difference. And it's, this is outside of drugs. This is stuff that's legal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I realized that when I was about 6 years old. Like, I used to go to a school disco when I was in primary school, and there were a tuck shop, and it was just where they would sell sweets and sodas and stuff like that. And I would always go to the tuck shop, and I used to get, at the end of the night, they'd always give me something for free. And I didn't realize it wasn't for years until my mum later on said to me, she was like, oh, do you know why you always got why you would always get like a can of Coke or some sweets or whatever for free from them? And I was like, no. And she said, oh, because she said you were the only kid that actually interacted with the old ladies who ran it, and you would spend time always asking them how they are, and like, but genuinely doing it. And she said they came to me and said, we always give them something, it's not that I expected something, and I didn't make that connection as such. that I was getting this thing. I was just like, just seeing a positive reaction from these people, and actually getting to know somebody is like, it makes them feel nice, and it makes you feel nice too.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. Yeah. And it seems like you've been able to kind of structure your world in such a way that you're able to just kind of live that way now. Like, microdosing probably isn't the most lucrative thing, but you're in it because people are getting helped, and CBD, CBD is nice, but yeah, it's got to be a labor of love to a large part.
Sure. I mean, like, I've launched other websites and stuff now, and I have like a nootropics website. I'm really into longevity and just in general fine tuning our minds and our bodies. So I love the idea of people living a long time, but rather than getting to the age of say 70 and having a fast decline where our bodies start shutting down, and after you've worked all your life. I think the idea of actually living healthy until we die, like reducing the window of pain and decline. So like I've got really into that in the past few years. So I actually run a nootropics website, Cerebra Nootropics, and that's
Have you heard this phrase, health span versus lifespan?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I really appreciate that line. It's like, how long are you healthy for? This guy I follow in the States, Kelly Starrett, he talks a lot about mobility and health and longevity. And it's like, I just want to be pretty peak until I just pop out. It's like, all right, heart attack, done. But you're healthy up until that point. And I think that's a pretty cool way to think about it. Perhaps not realistic for everybody, but a nice, target for those of us who want to go in that direction. Or
I'd like it to be realistic for everybody, though. I mean,
yeah, no, that's preferable for sure.
There would have to be a lot of changes because, if people live longer or live healthier, then people are in retirement for longer, which means there's more money on, more costs. But then you also reduce medical costs massively. If people don't have don't have to go to hospital, and people are spending the last 10 years in and out of hospital, the medical costs are, ridiculously sky high.
Yeah.
If we can remove that.
So, yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like there's so much room here for improvement. Like there's no real, I was reading a critique yesterday from Dr. Stan Groff about like psychiatric hospitals and the expenses there, like how expensive it is to be in a traditional facility for, even just overnight, compared to like alternate methods that have been in existence in the past, like kind of residential kind of inpatient facilities that aren't real hospitals. And, somebody that had an extreme psychedelic state could go there for a couple weeks just to kind of settle. And it's not going to make them go bankrupt like a psych hospital might. In the States, we have to worry about this a lot. Like I currently do not have health insurance, so I can't see a doctor. So I'm like,
Seriously?
Oh yeah. Well, I could go see a doctor, but I'm going to have to pay $150 to $300 probably per
just
visit.
To see a doctor.
Right. That's no drugs administered. No. Yeah. So, thankfully I'm in my position where I can reach out to friends who are doctors and nurse practitioners and stuff, but still not the best. So like
millions of people who can't though.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So they're out there. Thankfully, like for low income people, there is some sort of protection. Like you can get some really inexpensive insurance if you're not making much. Medicaid, Medicare is kind of what they call it over here.
Okay.
But it's, in stark contrast to like what European systems look like. Just the other day, I wanted to go, I had this thought, like, how did countries with universal healthcare do with COVID relative to countries without it? And you could see maybe like modern countries. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So the United States did horrible. There's so many countries that won't let me in at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so that's a simple enough argument for me on that. But, I get that healthcare costs are just bloated. Like there's no reason why an IV bag of saline fluid should be more than a couple dollars, but they're selling it for like $100+ often to the patients. It's like, it's a really cheap product. Come on, guys. Like, what are you doing?
It's gross. I think that's where lobbying comes in again, like with the insurance companies. I did a bit of research to it previously, and how much money they give to the government to fight laws to make healthcare cheaper in America is just.
Yep.
Yeah. It's free in the UK.
Yeah, right. Like that's my main argument. I try to make it not so about ethics and caring for other people. I try to make it about like, how do we keep the system really healthy?
Mm-hmm.
And for pandemics like this is like the main point of that argument. Like, how do we make sure everybody gets the care they need so that stuff can keep rolling in a more somewhat normal direction? Like, because what happens with the next 3 pandemics coming down the pipes, Yeah,
that's so true.
Anyway, I think that's enough for right now, Ash, but let's dig in.
Man.
Like, where, did we miss anything that might be essential?
I'm pretty sure I covered everything.
We didn't talk about the CBD drink.
Oh yeah. So just launching a CBD drink called Galaxy, which is being bottled, produced right now. Ready. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we should be ready. Oh, and I've got
nice.
So that's our Micro1p, 1PD. It says, the ultimate cognitive enhancer may help promote neuroplasticity. So that's
cool. That's great.
We've got that.
Can people buy that in stores in Europe, or is it mostly mail order?
It's just right now, it's only on micro1p.com.
Okay.
And it will be in some stores in the Netherlands soon. We've got some stores that we're going to be getting into, but they're very small stores in Amsterdam. And I'm involved. I've got my Cerebra Nootropics, which has loads of like information. We have great blogs about longevity, health span, lifespan. Involved in the I've got a podcast called Shifty Perspective, which is very new, very small, but it's not just about psychedelics. Actually, it's just about kind of changing people's perspectives on any topic. So,
outstanding.
That's pretty much what's going on right now in my life.
Well, you're doing some amazing stuff. I'm envious. I'm happy you're doing it. Can't wait to see what happens. I love that you're hitting all these angles too. The nootropics thing is really important. Longevity is super important. And there's so much that is just outside the grasp of, I don't know, mass culture on account of like, how do we get these things through testing? Like we've got really good safety data, but getting it through the official stuff is like insane at times. So it seems like you're kind of blazing that trail.
Pushing it hard, I'm really, really trying.
Good.
And with everything that I do, I give it my all. And if as it does well, like, as for example, if one thing is lucrative, then the money from that, I'm putting it into another thing that's positive, always, whether that's like helping with these studies, or I'm looking at setting up a psychedelic retreat for people that are terminally ill in Portugal. Actually, that's something I'm also going to be in the research phase of right now. So
outstanding.
There's lots of good things going on.
What drug in particular there?
So I have to find out what we can and can't do. So at the moment, I've hired a local Portuguese person to find suitable properties. We want to get a rustic farm that's like really out of the way for that, that people can go to. And then I'd like to, if possible, do it with MDMA and 5-MeO-DMT and possibly DMT as well.
Outstanding.
It really depends on the legality of it, but we want to offer psychedelic assistance to people. So we'll get psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists who can come, and they will keep them completely anonymous, so they can come out there. The idea is that like I'll fund my company will like donate the funding for it, and then hopefully we can take donations to actually keep it running. But we just want everybody involved to just come and help out. So those guys will be able to come over, work anonymously with people. We can reach out to people that are essentially, my feeling is those who are terminally ill, mainly. So husband and wife, maybe they can come out and they can have a psychedelic experience or an experience at MDMA together to try to come to terms with what they're facing, and that kind of thing.
Well, keep me posted on that. I would love to help spread the word if and when you're ready for funding. It's a really great project. And I always love the small organizations that come up and kind of just say, hey, we're doing it. And
Cool.
not enough of those. So
yeah, definitely.
I'd love to help you raise some funds once you're ready.
Great. Well, if ever you come to the Netherlands, make sure you drop me a message, hook up, and we can have some exciting experiences if you're into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as I'm ready, as soon as the law will allow me, I'm there.
Cool. Great.
All right. Thanks, Ash.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Cheers.
And there you have it. Ash, what'd you think? I thought it was a pretty fun podcast. We go all over the map, really. And it was just cool to connect with folks that aren't Americans. There's a lot going on in the world, and not everything is happening in the USA. There's so much going on in the UK, EU, even Canada and Australia, so much movement. And it's just good to get a bigger picture, just to know, like, if stuff gets held up here or something weird happens here, like, there's still plenty of stuff happening elsewhere, and it should impact at least public perception and funding and all that kind of stuff. So we're in kind of like a fault tolerant position right now. It seems like to me, like, if something fails, we still got other folks in place to pick up the pieces. So I'm really stoked about that and just happy to see it. It's warming my heart. And I guess next step, let's get some trials on holotropic breathwork or something going. So if you want to check out Ash's stuff, check out Micro1p or Journeys, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes if you want to just go to our website and go to his site from there. And I think that's it. Again, if you want to support us, leave us a review on Facebook or your podcast app, or just tell a friend. Leave us a small monthly donation of $2 or more at patreon.com/psychedelics today. And check out our educational offerings at psychedeliceducationcenter.com. A lot of great stuff there. Free classes, cheap classes, more serious, complicated courses that will give you an amazing foundation and maybe shore up some of your beliefs and thinkings around psychedelics and the human mind. So I think that's it for now. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Joe Moore signing off from Breckenridge, Colorado for Psychedelics Today. Bye-bye. Love y'all.